Welcome. Today we're going to talk about NotePlan 2, which is a really cool app that really reminds me of a digital bullet journal. It's got a great calendar view, it takes notes, it lets you deal with your events. It's excellent, and it all stores everything in Markdown. That's what we're going to look at in both macOS and iPadOS for this, what will probably be a reasonably long screencast. So buckle up if you're interested in a digital bullet journal. Now, before we dive into everything that NotePlan 2 can do for you, let's just take a look at some of the basic kind of all-around settings and features. One of the first things we're going to look at is the themes, and we can find those in our preferences on iOS, and it is under select a theme. You can see we have a few nice themes here. I'll actually be switching between my trackpad and my finger. Right, we have a few nice themes in here that they just look nice. You have lots of options. As a coder, I recognize these as coding themes. They're pretty standard coding themes. These are also available on macOS under your themes. So under preferences, I hit Command comma to get there quickly. You can usually find that under NotePlan. Yep, preferences, Command comma. You can see that we have multiple themes here as well. So depending on what you like, there's lots of dark themes, lots of light themes. These are all fairly popular code editor themes. One of the other things that NotePlan 2 lets you do in both macOS and iOS is change which day of the week your calendar starts on. Right? You see it starts on Sunday here, but you can do Monday. Monday is, I understand, fairly common in Europe. Or if you're really dumb or crazy, you could do Thursday if you want. Whatever you want. You can also see here that it lets me sync whatever calendar I'd like. Let's dive into NotePlan 2 and how it handles tasks now. Ultimately, there are two spots that a task can exist. You can see them here. This is on a calendar day, right? I can actually click forward and you can see all different ones, right? I take out the garbage when garbage is Wednesday here. So you can see that they can exist here. And the other place they can exist is in a note. You can see here I have some under my admin note. Right, invoice clients, it's done. Pay us, done. So you can see that I have them here, and they're in two different spots. So you could use these for a note on, say, a client meeting. You'd come into your meeting, and you could use that. You can see maybe down here, right? I have this. This is tagged as prov pubs, and you can see over here I actually have a hashtag that says prov. That will show all of my notes, and all of my tasks, or the notes that are on a day. Right, the notes that are on a day over here, it'll show them both under that search, but I'll get into searches and filters later. To add a task, it's fairly simple. You can use a bullet, space, and it'll give you a fancy one. You can also hit Command L, and it will give you a bullet. So this is a task. Same thing goes over on iOS. I will show you specific iOS features as they are needed. Now, by default, it's the star, but you can go into settings and go into Markdown. You can see you can change it to dash or a 1 or whatever you'd like, really. I like bullet because I don't use that as Markdown lists normally. I usually use the dash. So I just left it as the bullet or Command L to give myself a task on a day. Now, something I don't have on here is a clean the backyard task. So let's make that, and let's make it a repeating one, because we have our yard service come on Tuesdays. So I need to clean the backyard tonight, make sure no kids' toys are all over so that they can actually mow the lawn. In macOS, we have my task. I'm gonna hit these three, this little hamburger menu here, and you can schedule it for a specific day, but I also have the repeat. And so I could repeat it every week for, this is where NotePlan becomes a little tricky. What it actually is going to do in the background is write to as many files as I want. So if I do 100 repeats, it's actually going to write to 100 separate Markdown files. I'll show you those later. So doing a repeat on macOS and even on iPadOS or iOS is totally fine. It works, but on iPadOS and iOS, it's slower. So I can hit repeat here, and I'm going to schedule it for every day. On Mondays, clean the backyard. You can't put a time in them, but that's fine by me. So I can hit repeat. And now we have a repeating task, right? So you see a little green thing here saying it was doing it. So we now have a repeating task. To delete a repeating task, you actually need to not or I'm not deleting this first task because it counts as kind of a standalone task on its own still, just a quirk of NotePlan, and to go to the next instance of it. And here I just highlight it, hit delete, and it'll pop up this dialog that says delete repeat. This is repeating to do. Should I delete the future ones? And you choose yes or no. Now let's also create a repeating to do in iOS, just so you can see the slightly different interface for that. So again, I just can hit enter, and it, just like a normal markdown, will autocomplete the list. So I can say clean backyard. And on macOS, I go down here to this little clock icon. I click it, and I have very similar interface that I have on macOS. I can say every week for how many weeks. All right, we'll just go 14, hit repeat, and we have it. I found kind of a sweet spot on iPadOS is 100 repeats of anything. So that would give me, say, 2 years of repeats in this instance. I can go to clean backyard again to delete, and I just like macOS, I highlight, hit delete, and it will give me this dialog to say, do I want to delete the future ones or not? I'm going to click yes. Now, one thing NotePlan doesn't offer you here is repeating tasks forever, because it would literally never stop writing files in this case. I would be writing it until the calendar system ended in macOS, and that would just, clog up your system. So it has, again, 100 seems to be the sweet spot for me, and I think it's tops out at like 300. It'll only let you write 300 repeats. Not necessarily a big deal, but if you want to repeat something daily, then that does mean you're only repeating it for a year at a time. Now, to migrate a task in NotePlan 2 is a little bit of work, right? So I can say here, I have choose a home task. You can see I've technically repeated this twice. What we have to do to migrate this is copy it and paste it into today. That's how we migrate tasks. You can see it doesn't actually migrate the repeat cycles, it just migrated that one task here. Then I could resolve it if I've actually done the task. The same process happens on iOS, you just have to actually migrate a task manually each time. There's no interface to migrate it forward for you. You don't actually have to migrate the task though if you just want to see what you have undone. You can see here I have all these little red dots everywhere, and I have a total of them up here. And so here I could click on it and see here's all my overdue tasks. So yesterday I was doing some testing again, and I could say repeat this task. That's actually done. All right, Patreon, order this book from the Bookman. I had to check that one out because I don't know what it is. I've done the Packed Community. I wrote the Friday email. So I can just go through and resolve those. It's a fairly unobtrusive way. To get back out of it, you hit the X here in macOS. On iPadOS, you basically have the same interface right there beside the calendar. You'll have a little, in macOS on mine, it's an orange dot, because that's the theme I have for mine. And then I just click the orange dot, and it shows me the overdue tasks. One thing NotePlan 2 is missing is the ability to remind you about a task in your note at a certain time. That doesn't mean you can't do it, it just means that you need to use their native reminders integration to make that happen. We're going to talk about reminders in a bit. Now let's look at our notes more in NotePlan 2. The truth is that every task sits inside a note. Some of them are just associated with a specific day, and some of them are associated with a note itself. In macOS, if you have the sidebar open, you just click on notes and you get there. In iPadOS, you come over and click on the hamburger menu, and then you go to your notes. You can see you have your notes there. Now, notes in general support most of Markdown, right? I can do a block quote. See, I already have an image embedded in here. Right there, it shows up on my iPad as well. Sync is quite fast as well. Like within a few seconds, I'm seeing between my two screens that I have open right now, I'm seeing things pop up on either screen. On macOS, I can also embed a file like right here. Right, I can click on this and it opened up my Mastering WooCommerce 4 PDF. This will not transfer over to my iPad though. Even though this is inside my iCloud drive, so both systems have access to it, it will not transfer over there. So any files that you embed in your NotePlan 2 notes are only going to show up and be useful to you in macOS. There's two main types of organization you can use for your files in NotePlan 2. So let's say I wanted to tag something as a client. I can tag it like this. And now if I clicked on the prop tag, it will actually show me my admin note and any other daily note that I had where I tagged them as well. The other way is using the mentions. So I'm just gonna use my wife's name here. That's Cynthia needs to do something. I don't know what she needs to do. You actually see that this shows up as over here, as at Cynthia, and now I can find any note. Again, this will show me any daily notes where I tagged her as well. I'm not sure that you need to use this as a person, but you could certainly use it for any type of context, say errands, stuff like that, to remove it from your hashtags so that you don't have confusion in them, so they can both operate together. Now, when it comes to searches, NotePlan 2 on either platform has you set really. You can come up here to your smart filters, and you can choose whether I only want to see my notes, only calendar, only events, only reminders, how I want to see the task status, the time frames, everything like that. And then I can actually save it or run it as a filter. So let's say I want to search for Cynthia. There you go, and you even see notes with her in it. And I can say, yep, events, calendar, notes, so I could even remove notes. It should not show anything with her name in there. And I can hit save and title it as Cynthia. And now I actually have a saved filter. And you can see it took out the note with her in there. And if I want to find anything with Cynthia in it, I just have to click this now. Now, one of the things you can see on macOS, and this holds true for iPadOS, is I can't change it. It's just what it is. So what I have to do is I actually have to delete it and then recreate it if I want to alter it because that search wasn't quite right. So for that purpose, what I say is move to trash, is to run a search, get your filter parameters all correct, and then save it. Otherwise, it's a pain in the butt. Now, you'll notice on iPadOS right here, you don't actually see the filter menu because you need to hit the magnifying glass first, and then I could do Cynthia. And now I could run the filter and I could take out notes and I can either save it or run filter. So run filter will just run it once, saves it, right? Yeah, from iPad. And then I'd save it and have the filter I wanted. Again, this will be available now on both iPad and on macOS once the file search syncs back and forth. One of the neat things about this is that it also supports wiki linking or deep linking. So each note has its own kind of URL location, and you can link notes to each other. To do that, we can hit double square bracket, and I can link to, using the arrow keys up and down, whatever I want. I can link to my 50-kilometer run. That was a run I did a while ago, and this was just my notes, the things I had to get ready for my 50-kilometer run. You can do the same thing on iOS as well. That's really it with notes. So let's go back to our calendar view. I've long thought that if you don't see your tasks on a calendar, your tasks in the midst of your day, you don't actually know what's going on or what you have to do in a day. This offers two views really. It offers this big calendar view, and it offers more of a list type view to see what's going on for the day. On iPadOS, we have similar setup. We can go back over to our calendar and we have my month view with little dots to signify how much is going on in a day. And then if I click up here, you can show a week with agenda. All right, just a week. Again, not a lot more information, but it shows me my agenda of the day. Or I can show month with agenda, which is what we saw already. Or I can also just hide the agenda, which means I'm going to hide the bottom. I find it's most useful to show me the week with agenda. That's generally the default view that I have. You can also toggle it by clicking show month here or show week. Same thing works on your phone as well. You have all these view options, although it's a single screen, right? It shows you a single screen here, and then you have to switch over to your notes. This is one of the spots that I actually find that NotePlan is falling down a bit because you do have some insight into your day, but you don't have a lot really. It's not like I can grab a task over here and put it in the day and do any time blocking. So it's okay, but it's not excellent. It gives you a bit of an idea what's happening. On iOS, it's actually worth because it just has those dots. And I just wish there was a little bit more. NotePlan 2 really does let you work with your events and reminders as well from the same interface. So let's go in here and let's add an event to start. Let's just say, meet John. That's not how you spell my friend John's name, but some cool event, and I would put it on today, right? The 13th, as I record this, never repeats. I can put my alerts in, I can add a URL, my note, everything. From 12 to 1, sure, add event. You see it showed up right here. Some cool event. Right, some cool event. If I open up my calendar, you see some cool event is also right there. If I want to add a reminder in macOS, I would go into the same interface and create a reminder. This is the only way that you're going to get alerts about what task is due at a certain time with NotePlan 2. So let's say actually I do have to buy milk. I don't. Let's say, you know what I have to do today? I have to go to the dump. Go to dump. It'll be after my run. Let's just give it a time and say I'm going to be done my run at 10 o'clock-ish, roughly. And then we're going to add a reminder. And you see I have a reminder in my day now. And this will actually show up in my reminders. Me go to dump at 10 a.m. So that means I can resolve this on any of my iOS devices inside reminders. And I can also go in here and delete it or mark it as completed from within the NotePlan 2 interface. You can see that was 2 interfaces for that. Right click lets you mark as complete, or I can go to dump, or click go to dump, and then I can save it. For my iPadOS, you access the same stuff up here. All right, I can create an event reminder here, like that, same interface, and I would choose my event or my reminder based on what I am dealing with at the moment. You can also come in and edit it, mark it as completed. But right click doesn't really give you the same quick interface. You have to go in and mark it as completed. I'm going to mark that as completed now. As far as data storage and sync goes, NotePlan 2 is using iCloud, and it writes it into separate files here. You can say I have text files. Technically they're markdown. NotePlan 2 uses the TXT file extension. See any saved filters and any notes. We have my attachment, that image I dragged in as well. So for long-term data storage, you really just have a bunch of markdown files. You could copy and paste them. All right, I could move all of these over to Obsidian, to whatever I'm using now, and have all my notes again, right? I could index, in fact, I could even index this folder with DevonThink, and then DevonThink would know what is in here, and I can just keep them around in DevonThink indefinitely. The important part to remember here is that you're not locked in to their system. You can move it to whatever you want. You can write a script to parse your calendar files. So it's a little nerdy, I admit, but you're not locked in. You have everything that you want and it's yours to own. There's no custom sync service that you have to try and figure out how to work with. It's just all sitting here on your hard drive. Now let's take a bit tighter look at NotePlan on iPadOS. Most of these hold up for iOS as well. So one thing to take a look at I always think is important is the keyboard shortcuts, and we can find those by holding Command. And you can see we've got a fair few, right? I can switch to today, show my sidebar, I can change how I'm editing, put in my headings, and just a fair few keyboard shortcuts so that I can navigate a lot of the interface without needing to touch the screen or use my trackpad to activate the screen. One thing NotePlan doesn't have is specific shortcut support. So yes, I am running the beta of iPadOS right now. Just bring shortcuts in here. Oh. I always find that move just a little tricky. Shortcuts in here, and if I look to create, I've got to have I'll just create a blank shortcut. If I search for NotePlan, nothing. What they do have though is decent X callback support. You can find the documentation, and I'll link it below, for X callback support here. They have some pretty decent stuff here, so you can create your own tasks with shortcuts by using the X callback support if you want. I'd love to see in NotePlan 3 proper shortcut support so that we have proper parameters and everything in shortcut, and this is only for like less or more obscure things that less people are going to do, but we don't have that yet. One alternative to using the X callback URL is to simply copy and paste a bulleted list into your keyboard in some fashion, and then you'll have it. I actually have one under YT. right? And you can see down the bottom, double comma or double semicolon YT, and you can see at the bottom I have right thumb end screen, and if I just space, that is a whole project for me. This would be for a YouTube video. There is a YouTube video. That's another way to do that. One caveat here is that you do need to create a multi-line fill-in snippet, text snippet in macOS. iPadOS doesn't do a good job of supporting that in the interface, although it will paste them properly if you've created in macOS. Now, other than that, it's really good. Like, it's pretty much every feature you have on macOS for NotePlan 2, you do have on iPadOS as well, or on iOS. I found the interface on iOS and iPadOS to just be really good. I haven't shown you my phone version. It's essentially the same thing. You're just a little more tapping to get back and forth on a smaller screen. Now we're going to talk about a few of the issues I have with NotePlan 2. For all of the simplicity, for all of the power that it does have, there are some issues. Like, it doesn't have a global hotkey. Right, if we look through some of our settings here to do, there's no global hotkey for me to just enter a task, right? Something like I usually use Control Option Space, and you can see this is tick, bringing up a global task entry system. They don't have that. And there's no reason you can't kind of hack around that with an xcallback URL, right? I could come up with some sort of Alfred script here to do an xcallback URL to add it to an inbox file, but again, I have to create a file for an inbox. So in that case, it doesn't operate like many other task managers do, and I can certainly see that some people would have a hard time with the learning curve or with changing their workflow to make that happen. Another issue that I already showed you with migrating a task is it's a copy and paste operation. It's just a pain in the butt. That's it. I think probably some of the best interface for this has always been digging through the review functionality in OmniFocus. I always come back to that as like the best kind of migration review system. It's also fairly cumbersome to switch between notes and calendar, and even to like find a specific note, right? I've got to now search in here to find it. Now there is some light at the end of the tunnel on this. In the Reddit community, that'll be linked below. They have showed off like a quick switcher where you hit, I think they said Command O, and it opens it up, and then you can like search for a note you have, or you can add a task to a day right from that switcher. So that will be excellent. I hope we have a global hotkey that triggers that switcher as well, so you can dive from any application right into NotePlan 2. Finally, the biggest annoyance that I have is there's no way to like do effective time blocking and have like, I want to write from 6:30 in the morning. I want to write from 7 to whatever time. Like, there's no good way to do that unless I leverage the reminders functionality, and it just doesn't feel like it meshes to me. So the final verdict, should you use NotePlan 2? NotePlan 2 is a really capable note-taking and task management app. I don't have a lot to say that's really terrible about it. It's not bad at all. It's really good, but there is a lot of extra friction with it. I think with the addition of the quick open feature that they have coming in version 3, I think if we had some better support for just adding a task from anywhere, if there's even an inbox of some fashion, like a default one, I feel like we'd have a lot more to work with here, and it would be a better application. I also wish that the calendar view just revealed some more detail. Like, there was a week view that actually showed you like your hours in the day, like a standard calendar view on macOS, but we don't have that yet. Ultimately, who would I recommend this for? If you're really into bullet journaling, I can really see that this is a great option for you. I actually used it, as you can tell probably from the screencast, for a month or a couple months and really liked it. And then those two friction points I mentioned were just a pain in the butt. Just enough of a pain in the butt that I couldn't keep going. I couldn't do it. I had to switch to something else. So I'll talk about something else eventually, but NotePlan 2 is really good. I like it, and I want to see where NotePlan 3 goes. I could absolutely see going back to NotePlan if NotePlan 3 has some of those features that I want, and I already know it's coming with some of them. That's it. If you like the video, you can give me a thumbs up below. If you love the video, you can subscribe, and then you hit the bell so that YouTube lets you know what happens. But then you make sure your device notifications are off, because you don't want notifications. You want to go do your work, stuff like that. And if you really loved it, you can go to patreon.com/CurtisMcHale, where you can support the channel. Have an excellent day.